Yes, the relay on YouTube. Check it out. Lots of stories about me on there. All the boxing facts and info that you want in a very entertaining, educational manner. The relay. Check it out on YouTube.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, let's start with this. Well, Munguia's co-promoter views Golovkin as the ideal opponent.
Ideal opponent? Ideal for what?
A trip to the hospital.
Makes sense.
Munguia was quoted as saying, "I felt good, strong. The idea was to work on several things inside the ring. Movements, defense, attacking, and I think we met those goals. O'Sullivan is a great fighter, very strong, but we knew how to impose ourselves clearly," Munguia said. He went on to say, "I'll fight whomever my promoter and my working team decide. There are several options on the table, but we have to go step by step and see what is best for us." The fighter explained that he will repeat his next training camp in the Otomi Ceremonial Center. As he warns, he noticed many advantages in terms of condition and strength from his work in that facility. Fernando Beltran, his co-promoter, would love to see Munguia in the ring with the IBF middleweight champion, Gennady Golovkin. He went on to say, "He's a fighter whom I view as an ideal opponent to face Munguia. He's already 36 years old, but he's no longer the destroyer that he was 3 or 4 years ago, and his reflexes are a half a second delayed, and the punches he receives are hurting him. I think that at this moment, it would be the fight that suits Jaime the most," Beltran confided. 2 years ago, a fight between Golovkin and Munguia was nearly finalized, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission would not allow the contest to take place as Munguia had no world-level experience and had never fought at middleweight. Well, that is not the case here today, ladies and gentlemen.
Things have changed.
You could definitely say that Jaime has more world-level experience here today than he had 2 years ago when that fight was a talking point. However, I don't feel he's amassed that much more world-level experience to where he's ready for that fight.
Not yet.
Munguia's people are making it crystal clear why they want Gennady Golovkin, why they idealize him as an opponent. It's because they feel that he's in decline, that his reflexes have slowed by a half a second, that he's over 35, he's 36, and punches are starting to hurt this guy, that he's not the same guy that he was 3 or 4 years ago. These are their words, not mine. So they're making it crystal clear that they think Gennady Golovkin at this point is ripe for the picking. The question is there any truth to that? I don't think Jaime Munguia is put together enough to win that fight,
Not yet.
even today. Maybe Golovkin would have to work for it a little harder than he would have 3 or 4 years ago, but Jaime Munguia is still there to be hit, you understand. He still is a young guy with leaky defense and an overall lack of ring savvy, though having the building blocks for what could be a very good pressure fighter in the future. However, here today, he's the guy who I saw get buzzed in his last fight by Spike O'Sullivan. Gary Spike O'Sullivan. You guys forget that? Towards the end of the round, at the end of what was a combination,
Got buzzed.
Jaime Munguia got caught. He got caught, and he looked stunned. He looked buzzed off a hard shot from Gary Spike O'Sullivan, because for some reason, in that O'Sullivan fight, Jaime was having success with his straight punches, with his straight 1-2 from the outside coming in. But rather than employing that more often than not, he kept choosing to throw bent arm punches and hook off with Gary
Why?
Spike O'Sullivan. Get into exchanges and trade with the guy. Well, that's not even necessary. If you're having success with your straight shots, make it easier on yourself and throw more of them. That's not what Jaime chose to do. He chose to make things a little harder than they needed to be. Against Gennady Golovkin, even today, I don't think Jaime has that luxury. I would still give Golovkin good odds to beat Jaime if that were Jaime's next fight. In all likelihood, it might not be, though I don't think we're far from it. But
We'll see.
most of the sentiments you're seeing in regards to Gennady Golovkin and what could be his decline, and I think that is a factor, is due to how he looked against Sergey Devianchenko. And I do feel that slippage is a factor. I mean, Golovkin's getting older the way everybody's getting older, okay? He's not, trapped in some time warp. He gets old the same as anybody else. But not enough consideration is also being given to the fighter that Sergey Devianchenko is. That, some part of what you saw might be slippage on Golovkin's end of it, but yet another part of what you saw might be that Sergey's actually a really good fighter. He's a durable guy. For every one shot that Golovkin threw, Sergey responded with 3 of his own.
Punches and bunches.
He definitely had an advantage in speed against Gennady in that fight. You know, Gennady, he's throwing one shot at a time. It's a hard shot that would hurt most guys, but Sergey's a tough guy. He took the shots and responded in kind with combination punching that flustered what could be a declining Gennady Golovkin. Some bit of what we saw has to be attributed to Sergey being a good and durable fighter.
Part of it, too.
You go thinking that it's, anybody's fight against Gennady Golovkin, the way you're just gonna walk in there and manhandle the guy based on what Sergey did. Hey, newsflash, you ain't Sergey. I'm gonna tell you something. There's an old saying, really old, older than me and you. I'm sure that you've heard it before. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. I think that the Golovkin people may be looking at a Munguia fight the way the Munguia people are looking at a Golovkin fight. They see what else is out there. They see what other kinds of fighters, what other kinds of challenges are out there, and then they look at each other and say, you know what, I prefer this guy over those guys. I think Golovkin would prefer a Munguia over a Demetrius Andrade.
Yeah, he would.
We know that they went after the fight in the past, okay? I think that they would prefer a Munguia over a Charlo.
Yeah.
Once again, we know that they tried to go after that Munguia fight in the past. We can say that desire has been expressed, at least before, for Golovkin to fight Jaime Munguia.
And not them.
And I think that desire still lingers in retrospect with what else is out there. They got to be telling themselves, for taking on an Andrade or taking on a Charlo, we might as well take on Munguia because he'll bring the Mexican-American fans into it. And we could turn over a pretty penny in a winnable fight. I think that they better be careful asking for that Golovkin fight because they just might get it. And if they get it too soon, it might not work out in their favor. In other news, PBC/Heyman Boxing's Tim Smith on Eddie Hearn saying he made a Charlo versus Andrade offer. Quote, if his lips are moving, you can't necessarily believe what's coming out. I don't know who'd he'd have made that offer to. I'm sure in his mind somewhere he made it to someone. I guess that what the PBC's Tim Smith is trying to imply is that Eddie Hearn's offer is all hot air, smoke, and mirrors. It's all production. PR stuff. That's what he's trying to insinuate. And, that might seem more believable, except that Eddie Hearn's offers to these fighters that are on the PBC side of things, I mean, whatever Eddie Hearn is offering, it was good enough for your boy Mikey Garcia, wasn't it? I mean, Mikey Garcia's on the DAZN side of things, the Matchroom side of things. That's where he is right now, and that's coming off of a pay-per-view payday on your side of the street.
With you guys.
After that, Mikey Garcia decided that, maybe I should go over there and see what Eddie Hearn's talking about. And Eddie Hearn's money, it was good enough for Mikey.
Sure was.
But it's not good enough for Jamal. Jamal, who's never even been on pay-per-view in a fight that either he won or lost. Jamal's never been on pay-per-view, whereas Mikey has. He was on pay-per-view with your boy Errol Spence on your side of the street. Immediately after that, where does he pop up? He pops up on the Matchroom DAZN side of things. So if whatever Eddie Hearn is offering was good enough for Mikey Garcia, I see little to no reason why it shouldn't be good enough for Jamal Charlo, who's never even been on pay-per-view, but he sure likes to act like
He's a slave!
And I say this because the ideal situation for any two fights given any two fighters is to stage the match wherever the fighters stand to make the most money, regardless of what side it is. The ideal situation for any fighter, because it's the fighters after all that are risking the most. Here, it's not the promoters, it's not the managers or the advisors, it's the fighters that are risking the most. And in that way, the ideal situation for any fighter that climbs between those ropes into the squared circle is for that fighter to be able to go where he stands to make the most. That is, if that fighter is in fact a network free agent. Now, it just so happens that Jamal Charlo could be categorized as such because he doesn't have a network contract with either Showtime or Fox. He floats between the two, even though those are two separate networks. When Showtime eats, Fox don't shit, and the same is true in reverse. Now, Jamal Charlo seems to seamlessly float from one network to the other, with the only constant being that these are both PBC-affiliated networks. But the PBC, by definition, is not a promotional outfit. So, in theory, Jamal Charlo should be able to go over to DAZN, collect a $7 million payday by fighting Demetrius Andrade, win or lose, and go back to doing whatever the fuck he was doing before that. In theory, it should work out that way. But as it stands, what the people over there at the PBC want to convince you of is that Jamal Charlo versus Chris Eubank Jr. is a better fight than Charlo versus Andrade, even though both Charlo and Andrade are two undefeated, two division champions, and a fight between them would be a unification match. Now, being a free agent and having a network deal both have their separate set of pros and cons.
They do.
You know, when you're a network free agent, you can go where you want to go, but you don't get that push from the network because they don't have a commitment to you. You don't have a network deal. The same is true in reverse. When you have a network deal, you get that push, but you need approval before you can go wherever you want to go. And the virtue of either one of these two things is that, you know, you're at liberty to walk into whatever situation you want to walk into. If you want to make a commitment to a network, you are at liberty to do so. If you want to remain a free agent because you feel that your name is big enough that you can go where you want to go, fight who you want to fight, and you don't even need a network's push, you can do that too. You know, they both got their set of virtues. But Jamal Charlo seems to be under the impression that he's a network free agent. He seems to be under the impression that he's his own promoter. And if that were true, what's stopping you from making $7 million? You know, what's stopping you? I mean, Tim Smith, he can question as to whether or not Eddie Hearn's money is real, but it's real enough for Mikey Garcia, and he's actually been on pay-per-view. One of you guys' pay-per-views. So that the money is real is not a question. The question is, why don't you guys want to know? Why doesn't Jamal Charlo, of all people, want to know if the money is real? Tim Smith not wanting to know is besides the point, because it ain't going to be Tim Smith fighting Demetrius Andrade. It would be Jamal Charlo. The better question is, why doesn't Jamal Charlo investigate as to if the money's real? I mean, the money Eddie Hearn's got, it's real enough for Mikey Garcia, right?
Right.
So why wouldn't it be real for Jamal? Why doesn't he want to know? I'll tell you why he doesn't want to know. Because he's comfortable being babied by Tim Smith and Al Heyman and the people over there at the PBC. He wants them to make those decisions for him because he feels they'll keep him in safe, winnable fights. He don't want to gamble. Tim Smith don't want to gamble. Al Heyman don't want to gamble. They don't want to do it. So they're not going to let Jamal go nowhere for nobody's $7 million, even if that's more than he stands to make in his next fight with Chris Eubank Jr. Do you think he's going to clear $7 million fighting Chris Eubank Jr.? Nothing against Chris, but if that guy's got a name, it ain't here stateside, it's over there in the UK. But if these two guys fight, where's it going to be? Is it going to be in the UK? No, it's going to be over here stateside. Do you think Jamal's going to clear $7 million for that fight? Or for what? T-shirts and hot dog money? I'm going to put this in layman's terms for you guys because I can imagine that even now there are people out there that still aren't getting it. And the best way to put it in layman's terms is if Fox didn't make a commitment to you, and Showtime didn't make a commitment to you, that there is not a contractual agreement between you, the fighter, and them, the network, that you will receive X amount of dollars after a certain period of time or a certain amount of fights. If no such contractual agreement and its obligations, its statutes, exist between you, the fighter, and them, the network, then there's no reason you shouldn't be able to go somewhere else and make a little bit of change. The interests of the network should not come before yours because that network has no commitment to you, nor you to them. But in the case of a lot of these PBC guys, it seems like they've got all the drawbacks of a network deal without actually having a network deal. And in that way, they're the unwitting slaves of Al Heyman's PBC. Now, just in keeping with the theme of PBC fighters, Keith Thurman has explained that he hopes to be back punching in March, having undergone hand surgery after his defeat to Manny Pacquiao. He intends to return this year and mentioned Errol Spence, Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, and Manny Pacquiao as possible opponents. Now, you notice that there's a name missing there.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
Yeah.
The name of Terrence Crawford. Oh, I know. It's gonna feel like I'm beating a dead horse, that we already know what the situation at 147 is.
I understand.
But I gotta hold this guy to his word, okay? Before, when Keith Thurman admitted to receiving some kind of an offer for a Terrence Crawford fight, the story was that he wasn't interested in that because he was interested in Manny Pacquiao. Well, you done been there and done that with Manny Pacquiao already. You fucking lost. And you're not getting a rematch. We all know it. So what are you telling me? You'd rather fight Sean Porter 2 times or Danny Garcia 2 times than lock horns with Terrence Crawford? Why? Those guys don't got belts. He does. Think about it for a second and think about how it sounds. You rather fight Sean Porter twice and Danny Garcia twice than lock horns with Terrence Crawford once. And you wonder why they call this guy the Boogeyman. Terrence Crawford's got a belt for you to win. They don't.
You don't want it.
Terrence Crawford's a fighter that's ranked on most pound for pound list. Where he's ranked depends, on whose list it is. It does vary from person to person, but one thing we can all agree on is that he graces most pound for pound lists and they don't. So why don't you show no kind of enthusiasm towards fighting that guy when you're the one who said that he's barely a champion?
Remember?
Those were Keith Thurman's words. Those are the anecdotes that he volunteered, you understand. That's what you had to say about it. Yet, when your dance card is free and you're thinking about who we might see you fighting this year, you don't even want to mention that guy's name. I said this before. I said this already. That if the excuse was that you're not going to deal with Crawford because you're busy with Manny, okay, you did what you had to do with Manny. You lost. You lost your belt. Are you going to fight Crawford now? Are you interested now? What's the excuse going to be now? That you can't back up your talk of Terrence Crawford barely being a champion because you want to stage a rematch with Danny Garcia for no belt at all? Or you want to stage a rematch with Sean Porter for no belt at all? What's the story? What's the excuse gonna be this time? You gotta hold these guys accountable for their word, because in this era of boxing, more so than any other era, there is a myriad, a multitude of sound bites available, a multitude of news articles echoing these sentiments from Keith Thurman. He wanted to let it be known to the boxing community that that's what he feels about Terrence Crawford. Well, this is what the boxing community feels about Keith Thurman. If that's how you feel, Brody, why don't you get in the ring and prove that he's barely a champion? Of all the disappointments I've had in the sport of boxing, fighters that perhaps weren't who I thought they were at some point, I'd have to say that Keith Thurman ranks amongst the highest of the disappointments. In 2016, which seems like a millennia ago, seems like a different era of boxing almost. 2016, I didn't figure that this is how this guy's career was going to go. After he beat Danny Garcia and he unified the titles, I didn't think that this is what this guy was made of. I thought better of him than this. But time has actually proven me wrong when it comes to Keith Thurman, that, maybe this guy never really was a competitor. I mean, you were so focused on Danny Garcia and Paulie Malignaggi. We never saw that kind of energy when it came to Brook, We didn't see him put that out there, and that could have been a sign that, Keith's all smoke and mirrors, man. This guy's not a competitor. He probably never fights Terrence Crawford. You realize that, right? He probably never fights that guy. He probably never backs up all his talk about Crawford barely being a champion. And I realize that. I understand it. I'm just bringing it to light that don't forget, underneath it all, this is who this guy really is.